Voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise. With the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, plenty planned for your Monday afternoon. Can join us if you like. Numbers to get in at 466-3776, 466-3776, or 800-825-5865. Give us a find on Twitter. The Hail Varsity Radio handle is H Varsity Radio. Give that a follow. Also follow Hail Varsity at Schmidt_radio. Chris Schmidt, that's me, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. And on the docket today, in about 20 minutes, we'll talk rush ends with one of the best at Nebraska, Jay Moore, with us. Jay Bird in the top 10 when it comes to sacks and hurries. Get his take on Ochaun Mathis, the season outlook, and camp. What it's like to be drudging through camp right now. We'll hear from Coach Chinander. We'll also hear from Ochaun Mathis. He met the media today, so some comments from both of them. And in hour two, it's another Monday with Charlie, Mr. Blackshirt. Charlie McBride will join us. His thoughts on the Big Red defense. Some thoughts on the scrimmage. What we are hearing happened Saturday. We'll relay some of that, and the top 25 is out, as well as a top 7 for standout Malachi Coleman. Some reaction to that. Can always email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. And we're recording this, is that right? Lay out what we're doing here technically for the old guy in the room.
Yeah, so we've heard your feedback. We know people out there love to get the video version of Hail Varsity Radio. But as you've seen in recent weeks, whenever people are watching the live stream, whenever Schmidt and I are in different locations, whenever we're on the same Wi-Fi, sometimes that live stream has some issues. So what we're doing is we're going to save
a not so subtle shot at 38th and Cornhusker.
What we're doing,
we're feeding more hamsters to run in the back.
We're going to say that's a good one. I like that.
We've named them McGuire and Sosa. We just keep getting them bigger, stronger, and faster. Keep the electricity going.
Yeah, we got them running 24 hours a day. But anyway, I digress. We are going to save some of those live stream shows for some of the bigger shows, some of the Hail Varsity Club shows and whatnot, or pregame shows. And we're going to try to get more and more of these just normal Monday through Friday shows recorded and posted up on YouTube. So if you do prefer listening to the show
and watching
our beautiful faces, we're going to give you the ability to do that, and it'll be posted up a little bit later tonight on YouTube. So that's our plan for today.
That's funny. Elijah being Mr. Diplomat with the technology side. I love it. So you know how to get in touch with us, and we'll dive into plenty. First and foremost, I'm a bit sad today, and a guy that has been a dear friend and a friend to many passed away this morning. So I want to start off with a tribute, a salute, and a tip of the cap to, I always call him Action Jackson, but Jack Pierce, longtime assistant for Nebraska, incredible recruiter, a guy who was instrumental, was really big on the Coach Osborne staff. Late 70s to early 90s. Jack passed away this morning. Jack did not only for all the times he'd gone and do the show, a wealth of knowledge and just funny, just a great storyteller, wonderful person. Jack was close with my dad, and him and my dad had some good times when it comes to Nebraska football. Jack, I remember this. I was, knee high, and it's spring game, and my dad got us onto the field. And I'm like, Dad, you don't work here. How did you pull this off? And here comes Jack Pierce wandering up. Hey, Steve. And it was cool. You're yay high, and you're getting to meet Broderick Thomas. And that's one of the dudes Jack Pierce recruited. You get to meet Neil Smith. Yeah. So Jack was a phenomenal family man, husband, father, and Trev Alberts tweeted out today, rest easy, Coach. And we are all thinking that for you, Coach Pierce. We love you. And we're thinking that for Jack's family. So when you hit your knees tonight, think of Coach Pierce and his family for sure. And Jack, we love you. We thank you for everything. So we'll spend some time as we transition to Saturday scrimmage, right? It is camp season, Elijah. Our feedback pretty much the same with what we heard. You and I did not go MacGyver and spy.
We may have tried.
we didn't pull a Coach Switzer where you plant somebody in the men's bathroom in North Stadium or West Stadium back in the day. We didn't do that, but it sounds like defense had a pretty good day.
Mm-hmm. Reports I'm hearing said Garrett Nelson had a very good day. That the defensive line looked like they picked up right where they left off last season, and the offensive line still a work in progress from what I'm hearing. Where there may be some development within the run game that still needs to be done, but that looks better. The pass protection needs to be a little bit better, but overall, it sounds like, as you said, the defense won the day. The secondary looked good. The linebackers looked experienced, and the defensive line looked like they picked up right where they left off, which are all encouraging things. And I don't think it's entirely unexpected. The fact
defense is going to be in front of the offense at this point of the camp a lot of times,
and that's not even counting in the fact that Nebraska is installing a new offense right now. Mm-hmm. So a new look offense combined with the fact that you got some continuity coming over from defense. Looking at a little over half the starters on defense are guys that have at least experience playing within the defense. So a lot more experience on that side of the ball in terms of guys who know what they're going to be doing and guys who really outplayed the offense last season already. So, this is what you hear in NFL training camp at this time of year too, where you go, these teams scrimmage and it was the defenses who won the day. That's just what happens. Defenses is usually allowed to play are able to play quicker and faster earlier in fall camp. So I don't think anyone here is surprised.
If it went the other way, where the offense is lighting up the defense, there'd be massive panic.
Well, there'd be more warning bells in my head than the expected. The defense won. Okay.
Yeah, the other way around. But Ochaun and Garrett did well. You had Teddy Prohaska is getting back into the flow against game speed, against those werewolves he'll face off the edge. You had Turner Corcoran also held out. So the offensive line is still trying to figure out who their five are, right? And then on top of that, you have a projected starter, right, with Turner that was not part of it. There was a good report, though, that Bryce Benhart had a good day. And I think that's encouraging, where he's got all the talent in the world, and it's a mentality with him. And if he had a good day off the edge, that's uplifting if you're a Nebraska fan. The quarterbacks and running backs did well. Anthony Grant continues to wow. Trey Palmer, Colton Feast said this in post-practice today, that Palmer had a good day, which is to be expected. But no, they're coming together. And then you have Blaise Gunnerson. He's a name to continue to look out for. It's one thing to have Ochaun. It's another thing to have Garrett Nelson and then Tanner. That three-headed monster, you feel good about if you're Nebraska. But then you have guys that have been in the program that are making some strides. At least it sounds like had a good scrimmage, and that's Blaise Gunnerson. You saw limited action from him against Wisconsin, but when he was in, I thought he performed pretty well. You've got Butler as well off the edge. So Nebraska has five bodies to work with. Not quite sure the gap after Nelson, Tanner, Mathis to Gunnerson and Butler, but there's five guys that it feels like that Nebraska's comfortable with. And you had a lot of former players there that got a chance to watch practice and see things. And it was a pretty lively atmosphere. They'll do another scrimmage Sunday, I think.
And I'll say one more thing about some of these reports we're hearing out. And if you're a Husker fan at home and you've seen stuff on Twitter, or you're listening to the show and you're hearing it, the warning bells shouldn't be going off on the offensive line just yet, simply for the fact that Raiola still has a lot of work left to be done with them, and that work is not going to be done by the time Northwestern rolls around. There is still going to be more work to be done this season.
Ongoing.
And he's got time. That work is ongoing, but it's almost encouraging to me that I hear the running game does look like it's improved from last season. And while that may be more because of the running backs and the offensive line, sounds like they were focusing on getting north and south, the running backs were. If the offensive line has a running game, the offense as a whole has a running game they can lean on, that's going to help you in pass protection. Mm-hmm. Whenever the defensive line is looking at a 3rd and 5 and they know, well, I'm not sure if they're going to run the ball, if they're going to throw the ball here. You can't pin your ears back and get after the quarterback. That's what makes the offensive line's job difficult in pass protection. Whenever the D-line can start getting into some of those pass rush stunts, where they're doing different twists and whatnot, where the rushing lanes don't matter as much and you're focused on getting after the quarterback. That puts you behind the 8 balls in offensive line whenever the defensive line has all these options of how they can get after the quarterback. If they know their first responsibility on a play is to stop the run and then they get after the quarterback, that might be the extra 1.5 seconds that you need to be able to get the ball off. So if the offensive line is doing better in generating run lanes and opening up the rushing attack for Nebraska's offense, it makes the concerns about the pass protection go away slightly. So keep that in mind.
Well, if you're balanced and you've got to respect the run and the pass on an offense with an experienced quarterback, a running back that can break one, and then an offensive line that is going to be physical and fire off the ball, those are all pretty decent things. You still have plenty of time before camp. You'll get into install and game plan next week. You still have this week. You still have a second scrimmage, and then you flip the script and you get ready for Northwestern with what bullets you have.
And that second scrimmage is the time when you're starting into game prep where you think that two deep is going to start coming to fruition a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And there are still some spots. There are spots I think where I'm getting closer to being able to put people down in pen as opposed to in pencil. Mm-hmm. But next week is that time whenever you're going to start getting a lot of these names move from pencil to pin in a depth chart. And I'm not saying we're going to get the depth chart released to us, but people who are in and around the program will know, and that'll start filtering its way down to people like you and me, Chris.
Let's hear from Coach Chinander, his take on Saturday. How'd the scrimmage go?
A lot of good and a lot of stuff to clean up. I'm pretty happy with how the ones operated, pretty happy with how they tackled. I think the 2s and 3s, we got to tighten that up a little bit. We got to have a little bit more separation on who's going to be those next guys up. We rotated a lot of guys in with the 1, so it wasn't just a pure 1 mix. It was kind of a 1A, 1B mix, and I think a lot of those guys showed great competition. I think there's a few guys that, kind of separated themselves, but there's still a lot of competition at just about every position.
So is there any separation with the secondary? How's that clarity coming?
I don't think so. Like I said, I think there's a couple guys that maybe kind of pulled themselves away and solidified their spot, and there's still a lot of competition. At every position we had, at least 3 corners rotated with the 1s, 3 safeties, 3 nickels, 3 inside backers, and I think a couple guys at every position kind of cleared their way, but there's still a lot of fight. There's still a lot of camp left.
So, Coach Chinander, we're going to get back to the secondary. You want to hear his thoughts, though. Cut 4 here on the interior line, because you got Ty, and then who's lining up next to Ty, and there's plenty of candidates.
Colton Feast is a guy that came in here as a kind of a walk-on guy that not many people outside the program knew about, and he's just worked, and he's put himself in a position to play a ton of snaps this year, whether he gets to be a starter or whether he's the first guy in the rotation. He's done an unbelievable job with technique. He's a powerful guy. He knows what's going on. He has good anticipation of the game, and he can really run for a big guy. He's playing on some special teams for us as well.
In the background, you heard Colton Feast ripping the door off of one of the many corridors in Memorial Stadium and going Hulk. I'm kidding, but there's always construction in the background going on with that new facility. More from Coach Chinander here on Feast and Win, who's going to kind of rise up and take that starting spot next to Ty Robinson.
Yeah, those guys are both competing. I think Nash has got a little better grasp of maybe the system. He can play a little faster. Stefan's still picking it up a little bit. Both those guys play with good technique. Both those guys are intelligent football players. That's going to be kind of a good battle to watch here as the next couple weeks of camp unfold and we get into another scrimmage, just to kind of see once they're, kind of equals with knowledge and grasp of what's going on, who's going to jump out and take that spot.
Finally, we'll hear from Coach Chinander on Nash Hutmacher, his ascension, his jump with where he was. You've seen limited snaps from the Polar Bear to what kind of jump he's made this fall, and he's right in the mix to not only get some playing time, but to win that spot. It sounds like Feast has been really good. It sounds like Wynn is uber talented, but new clearly to the defense. Then there's the Polar Bear. How's he continued to grind away?
Yeah, I think Nash, you guys see the videos. He's always had a lot of strength, a lot of power. Nash's lateral movement, his quickness, his change of direction has drastically increased over the last, probably since the season stopped till now. So that's what I'm really pleased with what he's done. Just his ability to move around a little bit better. Before it was just, if you were in one gap or in a two gap mode, he was good. If he's getting on the move and doing those types of things, probably wasn't the right defense for him. Now he's able to operate in all the calls.
That is Coach Chinander. We will check in with Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore. He's next on Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or El Duderino, if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Let's bring on Blackshirt Husker NFLer, the pride of Elkhorn, Jay Moore, with us, co-host Big Red Wrap-Up. Jay Bird, you feeling that itch? A couple of weeks till game day. Camp is going through, and, well, do you miss camp, dude?
I do not miss camp. Training camp was it was part of the process. It was a crappy part of football that you had to get through. But no, I do not miss that. I mean, training camp is brutal. It's a grind. I think, I'm making myself sound pretty old now, but these kids don't have it quite like it used to be. The 2-a-days and all that stuff. But now I will say their camp is a lot longer. Our camp was about 2 weeks. They're going on into week 3. Because everything's so spread out and split up. But camp is brutal. Getting there at 6:30, you're probably showing up to the stadium when it's dark, damn near, and you're leaving when it's dark. And then you get up, you feel like you close your eyes for about 5 minutes and your alarm's going off. You got to do it all over again. But it's one of those necessary evils that you go through to get into the season. But yeah, it's coming up close. It's just around the corner.
How different was Solich's camp from Callahan's camp? I'm not asking better or worse. I'm just saying, were there any differences?
Yeah, well, it actually it got quite different because of the NCAA started switching how training camp is held. When my first year with Solich, it was 2-a-days every day. I think Monday, Tuesday, you go full pads in the morning, half pads in the afternoon, and you're walking out of there at 9:30 at night. You're getting there. Practice started at 8 a.m. So you're getting there at 6:30 in the morning to get a bite to eat and get taped up. So you did that for a couple weeks, and then you usually have a scrimmage on Saturdays and you get Sunday off. But that's kind of how it went for 2 weeks, and it was a grind. I know I wasn't ready for it getting there as a freshman, but then the very next year when my second year with Solich in I've been at 03, they switched to where your first 5 days were you were not allowed to have 2-a-days. You were only allowed to have single practices. And then if you had a 2-a-day, you couldn't have back-to-back 2-a-days essentially. So if you had a 2-a-day the next day, it was a 1-a-day practice. So then that's kind of how I finished my training camp. So what usually would happen, you have a 2-a-day, the next day you'd come in and you'd have a light workout like a lift, and then meetings but the kicker was that one practice, it was usually about a 3-hour practice. So the Callahan would stretch that bad boy out and get all his money's worth through there. It was, to be honest, when I left Nebraska and I went to the NFL, I thought the NFL training camp was substantially easier than dealing with Callahan's. And we could have 2 days every day in the NFL, but they just weren't as long. They weren't as, in the NFL season is definitely much more of a grind. Obviously the 16 games, the 4 preseason games, but I remember my first training camp, the 49ers, like, oh my gosh, I felt fresh as a rose, as coming out of after practices. I'm like, this is nothing compared to what Bill put us through. So I felt pretty good. And unfortunately I got hurt too much with 49ers, but no, it's crazy how the different training camps and the mentalities of coaches and just how they go about it. I mean, it's different everywhere. So, but it's quite the transition going from Solis to Callahan and then to the NFL.
Jay Moore is with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Jay, how much of fall camp was just about getting yourself in shape for the football season? All the workouts you can do in summer conditioning, it feels like there's a different shape you need to be in, like a football shape to be ready for the season. How much of fall camp is that, and how much of fall camp is actually, getting ready for week 1, if you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Back in the day, you're going back into the 60s and 70s and probably in the 80s, guys didn't work out very much in the off season. That's why training camp was so long. I mean, that's why a lot of times back in the day, you'd have 3 days just to got the guys in shape. And obviously as workouts got better and guys worked out in the off season, they didn't need the need for practicing and getting them in shape wasn't there as much. But yeah, it is. I mean, I always said you can work out as hard and as make it as difficult as you want, but you still can't get into football shape until you put the pads on, you get the helmet on, and you go 11 on 11, because nothing gets you in shape for football like football. So yeah, that's important. It's getting the reps in, getting your body used to the physicality, getting the techniques down, knocking the rust off, getting your pad level right, getting your hand right, get your eyes right. I think that was the biggest thing to get in football shape was getting your eyes right. I think playing with good eye discipline is half the battle. And I think that's, getting all those, you want to call them 20-some practices in training camp. I think that was one of the most important things for me and a lot of guys is just getting your eyes trained and then getting your body prepared for the rigors of, 12 to 14 or 16 game seasons.
Jay Moore's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Jay, a thought on Ochaun Mathis. Sounds like Nebraska will have great options and rotation possibilities with Nelson, with Tanner, and with Ochaun. Let me ask you this, and Chin didn't really talk about moving him around much, but Ochaun's an athlete, and really all 3 of those guys are. Would it be advantageous? Could you see situations where maybe you're moving the guys around on a matchup or a weakness with the opposing offensive line? Is that something you think could happen?
Well, I would hope it does. If he is everything he's stacked up to be and talked about, you're definitely going to move him around. There's all sorts of situations you can do with great edge rushers. I look at guys like and I'm not don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing him to a guy like a Von Miller, but the flexibility and what you're able to do with a guy like him. I mean, half the time they can put over center as well and just completely mess with offenses. But if everything's stacked up to what he is supposed to do, and how much effort was put into getting him here, you're able to dictate quite a bit, and he might get some more attention. But I think a guy who's going to love having Ochaun there is a guy like Garrett Nelson, because if he's getting all the attention, you're getting the protection slid to him. That's going to mean Garrett Nelson's going to be able to be lined up on tight ends and running backs, because they're going to shift everyone over and give all the attention to Ochaun. And so hopefully the other edge guys and guys who are playing opposite side of Ochaun Mathis will be able to capitalize and really create more havoc and create more, get more, sacks on the quarterback and hits on the quarterback and tackles for losses and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the beauty of it is, you're able to move Ochaun around, but the guys playing on the other side are going to benefit, just like Jared Crick benefited so well when playing with Sue, because all the attention would go to Sue, and Jared's like, sweet, I got 1-1 matchups all day. I'll just take this quarterback's head off for for the whole game, and because he was that good, and so was Sue, and so rightfully so. So that's kind of the beauty of it is how other guys can benefit from when you have a really good guy who can produce and make plays.
Gonna ask you a football weeds question. So let's talk to me a minute here about the 5 technique, the 6 technique, and a 9 technique, because those are some shades that it sounds like Ochaun could be lining up in.
So 5 technique would be just outside shade of a tackle. So it usually happens when there's not a tight end on the outside. Usually if you have a defensive end playing on a 5 technique with a tight end there, you're usually in an under front or a 3-4 front type defense. I don't think they're going to put that Ochaun in that situation. So then a 6 technique. Now some people call these differently, but to me a 6 technique is you're lined up head up on a tight end. All right, so that could be within an over front, an under front, in a 3-4, whatever. Usually, guys in a 6 technique, you could have them dropping in coverage on that tight end in a man-to-man situation, or you're lined up there, and usually you have C gap responsibilities in the run game. 9 technique. Now you're just lined up on the outside of the tight end, and that's probably where I would see Ochaun, predominantly lining up within that defense, whether it's in a 3-4 or a 4-3, being on the outside shade of a tight end, setting the edge, having D gap responsibilities, be able to rush the passer from there, being able to drop into coverage to help in maybe a quarter situation, dropping in that flat to help the outside, that boundary corner, to get underneath to make maybe the pass go a little higher over his head. So those are kind of the 3, the 5, the 6, and the 9, and that's kind of where I lived as a defensive end as well as playing those techniques. So I know them very well.
Yeah, what was your favorite technique to pass rush from? I mean, yeah, you got to be proficient at all of them, I'm sure, but which one was your preferred method of choice?
Yeah, definitely the 9 technique. Some people call them a wide 9 or the 9 technique. It's because you're able to get a little wide, you're able to get kind of cocked in and then pointed in and really make the offensive tackle skitter your speed, because when you're in that 9 technique, that offensive lineman is really trying to kick out to you, but he's vulnerable, right? Because you can come with speed, you can come with power, and if he sets too wide, then all of a sudden, boom, he opens up that inside gap, which is, that's an offensive tackle. That's one area they always predicate that you cannot get beat is inside. So it puts him in a really tough bind, especially if he's not getting any help from the guard inside or whatever. So definitely the 9 technique is the moneymaker. That's where you want to be. That's where you want to start from, whether you're in a 2-point and 3-point. That's the spot you want to be, especially when it's 3rd and long, and they're in obvious passing situations. That's the best spot in my opinion, is that 9 technique.
Jay Moore with us, Hail Varsity Radio. We'll spend a few more minutes with Jay. Hang on the line, Bird, and get his thoughts on the upcoming season with Nebraska, his outlook on Ireland, and much more. We'll hear from Ochaun Mathis here next hour, get his take on how camp has been going. And we're about 20 minutes away from Mr. Blackshirt himself, Charlie McBride, a Monday with Charlie. He'll join us. We still have thoughts on Saturday's scrimmage. Malachi Coleman getting his top 7 list out. Nebraska, of course, part of that, but who else? And old Bevo. The Eyes of Texas got a number 1 vote in the latest coaches poll, the premier coaches poll. More with Jay Moore on the way with Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And we're back
Fellas, you think we could listen to the radio
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes, that's awesome.
Jay Moore is with us, Black Husker NFLer, Hail Varsity Radio, talking some fall ball. Jay, have you made your mind up? Do you have your gut how the season's going to go?
I get asked by 3 or 4 people every day. I was just talking with one of my guys at work here, and we were discussing it. It changes every day for me. I'm still I would say I'm still leaning a little more pessimistic. I'm still in a little more wait and see, just because we don't know. We don't know what's going to look like with Mark Whipple's offense. We don't know what's going to look like with a new quarterback. We don't know what's going to look like with the offensive line. We don't know who, how are some of these guys, being switched around, or guys coming off the injuries, so the offense to me is there's still a lot of, things are up in the air. Now defensively, you lose a lot of key guys up front, in the D line. And I know, that's where the defense happens. And I know you bring in some guys, through the transfer portal, Mathis, the kid out of Texas Tech, and you have some younger guys stepping up, but I just don't, to me, I was telling the guy here at work that I think 7-5 should be about as worse as it should get. But I mean, that's, we're talking about a team who hasn't sniffed 7 wins in the last 4 years. So, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid at all, but you just look at the schedule and like, man, that should be pretty attainable. But again, we're still talking about a team who is only one, hasn't even sniffed a winning record in 4 years. So it's tough. It's tough to see that. But again, you look at the schedule and you think, man, how can they not get there? But then you're like, oh, how can they get there too? Looking at what they've done the last 4 years. So it's tough. I think 7-5 is very, very attainable. But again, if things go south, in game one, I think you're looking at a situation that's similar to last year. Unfortunately, this team needs to get momentum going. They got to win early. This team hasn't felt a lot of wins. This team needs to get, I don't know if you want to call it buy-in, but just get the momentum going. They're working hard. I don't doubt that, but you got to see results from all the time and effort, that's put in the last, handful of years. So hopefully they get off to a good start against Northwestern. And I think, boom, it's, momentum will come. But if they get off to a slow start again, i.e. last year, I think it's going to be, tough sledding again and a lot of uphill climbing. But that's why you got to play the game, and we'll see here in a couple of weeks.
Jay, how important do you think that first, close game that Nebraska plays in this year will be? The first game where it's one score and it could go either way, because I see if they win it could start building that momentum, as you said, but a loss in another close game, I think it could give the team that, oh, here we go again feeling.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've been, in those situations as a player, and, I look at my sophomore season and my first year with Callahan, and, we went either 5-6 or 5-7. And we had some games where you felt it slipping away from you, and you weren't able to come back from it. And then we go fast forward to my junior year in 2005, and you felt like there were some of those situations were coming, like, oh gosh, here we go again. But we were able to battle through and fight through and get a win or keeping it close. You need that. You have to have that. It's as the mentality of the team and the psyche with young kids and just what they've went through. The last 3 or 4 years, and even last year with all the close games, you need to definitely get some close games, and one and under your belt just to get you over that hump, and kind of get those bad thoughts out of your mind, because they're going to be there, and they get in some sticky situations. They're going to be there. Those, oh, here we go again. But until they do it, they're always going to be there. But hopefully not early on. Maybe hopefully the first 3 wins or the first 3 games are comfortable wins. That maybe they beat Oklahoma, on a fourth, a 2-minute drive in the fourth quarter to where they hit a game-winning field goal, or against Minnesota, or Wisconsin, whoever it may be, something like that. Hopefully they can get one, because they deserve it. They definitely deserve it. They've been through they've gotten some tough breaks, and haven't been able to capitalize on the breaks. That they've gotten the good breaks even in those close games. But I think it's very important early on to and I hopefully let me preface. Hopefully those close wins aren't against like Georgia Southern and one of the Dakotas. That would not be a good deal.
Jay, we'll let you get out on this. And you mentioned close games and flipping that mindset. Making its way around Twitter this morning was the comeback victory against Michigan in the Alamo Bowl. The clip I saw was Zach's 2-minute drill, and he found Terrence Nunn for the win. You guys were down double digits and came back. Defense had a great second half. Was that a game you felt like you could come back in, or are you still shocked to this day the comeback happened?
No, I'm not. That game was just kind of, those bowl games are weird because, we didn't play in the Big 12 championship that year. So we had a lot of time off. So it's kind of, obviously a one-game scenario. And I remember that game. We just went and played. I played almost the whole game. I know Wally Muhammad was not eligible to play in that bowl game. So I think out of like the 90-some snaps, I think I played about 88 of them. So the game was kind of a blur to me just because that was the most snaps I think I've ever played in one game. But I just remember just playing. We just played, and and we got off to a good start. I think Zach I think Zach might have hit T-Non early on a little crossing pattern and broke a tackle and took it to the house early in the game. So that was big for us because Michigan was a really good football team that year. And, easily could have been playing in the Rose Bowl. But just getting off to a good start there. And we played well defensively, we caused a lot of turnovers. We were able to get to Chad Henne, get him rattled. We just battled. It was just a great game. It's just a crazy ending to the game. But we just kind of battled, and we just had multiple games like that. Even I look at A&M the very next year, where Zach does the same thing and hits Mo Purify in the corner of the end zone on a fade route, and he took the team down there on a 2-minute drill. So many instances like that, where we just kind of battled and you just play, and that's hopefully where they can get. Is just they just go play, and you don't have those thoughts about here we go again. You just show up, and when your number's called, you go out and do your job.
Well, Jay Bird, enjoy your week. We'll catch up again soon and get ready for Ireland. All right, bud?
Yep, you got it. Thanks, guys.
Good to spend time with Jay Moore, Black Shirt Husker NFL, our co-host, Big Red Wrap-Up. And he pretty much laid it out there. Just go play and not worry about that pucker factor, the tight ball games. Be confident. Elijah, I think you were on top of the point of the PTSD fear. Does it happen again? Do you fall by the ways? Listen, you're not gonna win every close game in the Big Ten, but
does that pucker factor go away with the new additions this season? I think is the question.
Well, I don't know that it goes away, but I think it can help you.
Yeah.
I think it can help you overcome. I mean, Nebraska's 2-12 in one-score games. Iowa's 8-5, and that's a big difference. Just get them go. You got to win all of them, but get some of them to go your way. We'll wind down hour one next on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. Charlie McBride coming up on Monday with Charlie. Every Monday we spend time, we sit down with Coach Charlie McBride around 5:05. Reminder to get buckled up. Using your seatbelt saves lives and prevents injuries only if properly worn. Be sure to buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. A guy getting some run, and deservedly so, this camp is Colton Feast. C2 ball player out of Utan, and Utan is a spot where Colton thrived, and he has transitioned, and he's a guy that has put the work in. He's a typical walk-on story with Nebraska, an in-state kid that is not going to take no for an answer, an in-state kid that's going to keep battling because he wants to play at his home state school at the highest level. And it doesn't matter that he's outweighed. He'll outwork. He'll get bigger. He'll get stronger. And all of that has paid off when we talk about who's in the mix next to Ty Robinson, who's in the mix to give Nebraska some much-needed depth. And you've heard stories. I mean, Iowa's come across the river and snagged a handful of kids from small town, Class B or lower, C1, C2, that get developed and do work. They do a nice job on that Iowa interior. Well, Nebraska didn't lose a guy like Colton Feast. They've kept him, and he's added 40 pounds. He's around 275, and he keeps working on that technique. And it's kind of nice to have these options on the interior. We talk a lot about Ochaun. We talk about Garrett Nelson. We hit on Caleb Tanner and the like on the outside, right? Well, on the interior, to have bodies is a necessary evil, clearly, with Robinson, with Hutmacher, with Wynn. But a guy like Feast, who's been soaking in all of this Chinander defense for X number of years. And it was good to hear from him a little bit earlier today. And it's a great story, but it's going to be more than just a fairy tale. I mean, it's a guy that's going to contribute. He's going to do well, and he'll produce. And he is also a shining example to other kids around the state, but other guys on that team, that it's all about payoff and sacrifice, and that's what Colton Feast has been able to do.
Well,
so,
and I especially look at the guys in that room who, were those 4-star type guys, the guys that were recruited to come to Nebraska at a high level. And you watch this guy that, man, I didn't hear about this guy in the recruiting cycle. Whenever I showed up on campus, I didn't know this guy was going to be playing. And you see the work he puts in and what he had to do to get on the field. And you can take a lesson out of that and say, if this is what it took for him to get on the field, that's what it's going to take for me to get on the field.
No, it's a standard setter is what it is with Colton Feast. So good stuff from HailVarsity.com on him and his role moving forward. We'll step away and get you ready for hour 2. Charlie McBride will join us. Excited for that. We'll also have Coach remember the late, great Jack Pierce. Coach Pierce passing away earlier this morning. Jack, a dear friend of the show. We loved him and are so sad to see him go. So we're thinking about him and his family. Hour 2 coming up. Coach McBride next. It's Hail Varsity presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it, hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We are going to run down Coach Charlie McBride, Monday with Charlie, Mr. Blackshirt. We do this every Monday with Coach, so we'll check in with him in a little bit. Wrapped up hour 2, discussing the impact of walk-on Colton Feast, defensive tackle. Think of some other in-state kids that really shined, and they played early in their career. Terry Keneally, Pat Engelbert, John Perella, just to name a few. And Colton Feast taken, a similar path to the walk-on and then thriving and then busting through to get a starting spot. That's still up in the air, but there's snaps to be had next to Ty Robinson. What's the reality of that for Feast? Is he going to be able to log some snaps, win a starting spot? Bottom line is the depth and the rotation that you need on the interior with Feast and a guy like Wynn, a guy like Nash Hutmacher, and Ty Robinson. You need a lot of bodies. We'll talk a little bit with Coach about that. You got to love the flexibility that exists on the defensive side of the ball with Ochaun Mathis, with Garrett Nelson, and Ochaun, I should say, and Caleb Tanner. So numbers to get in this hour can join us at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Give us a follow on Twitter at Schmidt_radio. Schmidt, that's me, at Herbal Lessons for Elijah Herbel, and give the Hail Varsity Radio handle a follow at H Varsity Radio, and as always, can find Hail Varsity at Hail Varsity. Email the show, Chris at HailVarsity.com. So we'll hear from Ochaun Mathis here a little bit here this hour. Top 25 is out, and it's quite interesting when you look at who's ranked in the Big Ten, who's just outside the top 25 in the Big Ten, and then Bevo of all people getting a ranking as they come in at number 18. But the difference is Texas received a first place vote. Don't know if that's a joke. Don't know if it's Sark pumping up his guys, if it's an SID that got a wild hair. Unclear, but they are ranked. To run down the preseason top 25, of course, it's Bama, then Ohio State. Michigan comes in, I believe, at 6, and Wisconsin checks in at 20. That's about it. Just 3 Big Ten teams, Ohio State, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Check that. Michigan State comes in at number 14. So 4 Big Ten teams. You'll have Iowa just on the outside of the top 25, along with Penn State. And I know Minnesota received some votes, I think 6, but Nebraska not sniffing a top 25 vote. Neither is Northwestern. That's about fair. Win some ball games, do your job, cover the number, and get to Oklahoma. But first things first is doing your job in a dicey game out in Ireland.
Well, yeah, I mean, last time Nebraska was ranked, I think off the top of my head, was for that trip out to Boulder. So with that in mind, I don't think Nebraska has showed me anything since then to prove that they should be put into a top 25 in a preseason poll. So go out and earn it.
That's Elijah's edict right now, is going out and earning it when it comes to preseason rankings. Those can be way off, or those can be just right with the numbers. So we'll spend a little bit of time on that. Malachi Coleman, what's his take on where he's going? But first, let's check in with Coach McBride. Charlie McBride joins us on a Monday with Hail Varsity. Coach, how are we doing?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I guess I tried to, I thought you weren't calling, but I had my ringer turned off. That's part of the course after I heard some stuff today.
Yeah.
Kind of, about Jack Pierce. And
well,
it's kind of hard.
It is, Coach. And, Jack was somebody that I got to meet through my dad, and I always loved Jack and think about him a lot, would stay in touch with him. And do you remember the first time you met Jack?
Oh, it was right when he came up from Alabama. He was, I think he was coaching over at Lincoln High.
Yeah.
And that's when I first met him, and then he came over with us.
Well, and he was on staff with you guys and was one of your defensive coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, as we think about Jack's life, I mean, he always makes me smile when I think of him.
Well, Jack was a great recruiter. I mean, he was special, and just, I don't know all the details, because I try to stay out of most of that stuff.
Yeah.
But he went on and he worked his tail off for the smaller colleges in the state. And then of course he worked for he worked for the development office at the end. But he's special, and he always, I'll tell you, if there's a guy that's more loyal to Nebraska than that guy, I don't know who it is.
Charlie McBride's with us at Hail Varsity. We're remembering Jack Pierce. Jack passing this morning. And Jack had such an eye for talent, Coach, but Jack had the gift of gab, didn't he?
Oh, he'd do that. I mean, he gets. The worst thing is if you knew he had a cigar in his mouth, you're in for the long speech. I tell him we went down to LaGrange, Georgia, to talk to a kid. He took me down there to see a kid, and we got down there, and the assistant principal he got us to the side, and he said, you're only allowed to see these kids 3 times this year. You know, that's the rule in in person. And we said, yeah. He said, well, there's a coach from Auburn that's here. And he's been here 25 days in a row. And he's sitting in the gym with the head coach. And so, I mentioned that to him, and he didn't seem to be moved by it. Well, after I got done talking to the player, I went out and introduced myself to him and the coach and stuff like that. And I said, you're only allowed to see these kids 3 times during the year. You know what the guy said to me? He said, we can't count down here. So Jack and I just left, but we got pulled over for speeding because we were late going there, and the policeman asked us what we did, and we told him we were football coaches going to LaGrange to talk to this kid. He said, "Okay, boys, slow her down, let her go." So he just let us go, and but that's how people like football down there, eh? I think that they understand what we're going through a lot of times chasing these kids around. Now it's even worse because you got, the telephones and all, it's really tough on everybody.
Let me ask, Coach, who was driving, you or Jack?
Jack was driving. I didn't know my way around Georgia, so Jack gets blamed for that.
Yeah.
But he was all over the place. The guy was amazing, and to have him not on the staff, it really was sad at one time. But I know he picked himself up and really came on and did so much for the university. It's unbelievable.
Well, just with working for Coach Osborne and working with you and in his recruiting, that was super impressive. But when it comes to fundraising, I mean, Jack got the dough, Coach, and you know this for the sky boxes.
That's right. That's right. I mean, he was just a guy that people liked. You could not like him, and we had a couple of guys here. Chris Peterson was the same way.
Yeah.
When he was here, and we were a lot fortunate to have some really good people that were in the development office.
Well, the story that Jack told me, and I told this to start the show, was Jack was recruiting Neil Smith down in New Orleans, and Jack, I don't know if this happened or not, Coach, but Jack was sending Neil's mom flowers every week. But the flowers were signed by Coach Osborne. I think Jack signed the card.
Oh yeah, I believe that. Sure. That's probably really true. I mean, I didn't know that exactly, but I believe it.
Well, when they got down there to talk to Neil about Nebraska, there's about a line of 50 people ready to either shake Coach's hand or hug him.
That's right. He probably didn't know what was going on.
He didn't. I think Jack had. So.
Well, I don't know. It's he's always been there for you. When you ever ask him to do something or you ask him to do a favor or something like that, he'll do it. I mean, he was one of those guys that just, he was a workaholic.
Mm-hmm. Charlie McBride's with us on Monday with Charlie. We're remembering the great Jack Pierce. Jack passing this morning. We love him and going to miss him. Coach, a thought about just as we tie it back with you and Jack and what you wanted to do with recruiting at that time. Specifically, you guys did just great work all around the country, but specifically in the South. You got a lot of really good guys that could get after the quarterback, kind of what Nebraska's trying to do this year with some of their options on the edge.
Well, I think that's what happened. And the one thing with Neil Smith was a good example. He had me down there to look at the defensive end that was on that team.
Mm-hmm.
And Neil Smith at the time was playing tackle next to the guy. The defensive end that I was looking at got hurt, and Neil, they moved him out to defensive end, and he was like all over the place. And I said to Jack, who in the world is this? And Jack said, "You like that guy?" I said, he was all excited. He says, I said, he's not he doesn't weigh very much. And I think when he came, he weighed 218 pounds.
Jeez.
I think it was when we weighed him in. And, but playing on the edge, I'll tell you what, he was really something. I mean, he had long arms. He had over 7 foot arm span.
Man.
And he would just put his hand on your shoulder pads right by your armpit there and straighten it out and run right by you. You couldn't get your hands on him, because his arms were so long. And then he had a tough time. He went to the Chiefs and he had torn a tendon in his leg the first year, and everybody thought he was a bust, and that whole thing. And he went through that, and but Jack was always there for those guys too when they came back, and it was nice to see all that stuff, because that's what you talk about, family, and if there was anybody part of the Nebraska family, he was.
Charlie McBride's with us someday with Charlie. Coach, we feel for you today, and we'll be in touch with you. But thanks for remembering Jack with us today, okay?
Yeah, we love him, and he'll never be forgotten by all of us, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Coach, you take care. We're thinking of you, okay?
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
All right. It's Coach Charlie McBride with us on Monday, Hail Varsity Radio. Tribute to Jack. We love Jack Pierce, and sad to hear about his news passing today, but that was Charlie. Charlie and Jack were so good together, and they had some good times together, and clearly you hear in Coach's voice he's sad, and he should be, and lost a dear friend. But I could also hear the smile in Coach's voice when we think about when he remembered some of the good times with Coach Jack, and that was some therapy there for a lot of Nebraska fans to hear about some of the good times and just Jack and what he did for Nebraska football. So we'll jump forward shortly and talk a little bit here, keeping with the recruiting theme. You have Malachi Coleman releasing his top 7. Elijah and I will spend some time and sift through that. What's it mean as you have that October date? Good story in the World Herald over the weekend by Evan Bland as he caught up with Malachi Coleman. We'll get there. We'll talk top 25 preseason and more to get to with Coach Chinander, and more thoughts from Ochaun Mathis. That's on the way here on a Monday with Hail Varsity. Can email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. Find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio or at Herbel Essence. Thoughts on Malachi Coleman, his top 7 next.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Good to have you back in on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Big thanks to Charlie McBride. Joined us a little bit ago. Remembered his dear friend, Jack Pierce. And we will spend a little bit of time on recruiting. And you look at where things are going for Malachi Coleman. And it wasn't that long ago we talked to Coach Gingery of Lincoln East, and we love Ging. He's such a really good football program. And where will this top 100 prospect end up? And you have a lot of the recruiting analysts that are bullish on Nebraska being able to land Malachi Coleman. He's nearing his decision. And a good story from Evan Bland of the World Herald. Good stuff from Aaron Sorensen, obviously from Hail Varsity on the recruiting side of things. And, here's Malachi's life. And I don't know him. I've covered him. I've seen and done East games football and basketball and just the camp circuit. You keep an ear to with his measurables at 6'5" and over 2 bills, and the fact that the guy's just incredible as a track athlete, the 100 and 200. And what's the reality here? And the reality is Nebraska is on the clock. Now they're deep in the running that you could even say Nebraska's the favorite because he's the home state school, but it's not because of Nebraska's recent history or recent winning percentage. Nebraska and Mickey Josephs have done a phenomenal job in recruiting him. Nebraska went all out in June to make sure they knew that Malachi's as high as you can get on the board for 2023, and they're not taking him for granted. They're treating him as the priority in the class of 2023. So Nebraska's approach, phenomenal. Malachi's not gone super in depth with all the ins and outs of the official visit, but Nebraska went early and tried to wow. And with him being an in-state kid, there can always be, I would think, an unofficial. I don't know. You tell me this, Elijah. You're a lot closer to the recruiting, not only age, but you've had friends that have been recruited. Say a kid's already taken his officials. Can you still go back and do an unofficial after you do your official?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can take as many unofficials as you want whenever you want. So say Malachi has got a free Saturday and he goes, I kind of want to go check out this Husker today. He can just call up whatever coach his contact is and say, hey, I'd like to come to the game. And they'll say, we'll get you a pass printed off, and you can go get there on your own dollar, but from across town. It's not difficult at all. Right.
So the year-long recruiting process going to wind down for Coleman, and that announcement date moved up to August, make that October. Sorry to freak anyone there. October 15th. And the move up is just to get it over with, because it's gone from fun and exciting to, pretty burdensome. And, he was telling Evan Bland that, look, I might be needing to get a second phone for just the recruiting line, because it's been that hot and heavy. And you had Malachi on Twitter Saturday release his top 7. Michigan's been all over him. Michigan's been early. Georgia has been in on him. Oklahoma. We got a picture from a listener. This was back in June, where Switzer and Malachi are having dinner down in Norman. I mean, that almost ain't fair. Hey, let's send Barry in to close this deal. Barry's never lost a recruit in his life, quite honestly. Nebraska's there, Southern Cal, Oregon. And that's, you look at Oregon's track history, because Malachi wants to run track in high school with what Oregon is right now as a brand. And in the football world, they're fine now. Where's Oregon at in 2 years when it comes to being able to win and compete and win a championship? They should end up okay. And then you have Mississippi. You have Ole Miss. So you've got vicinity, and that is really it for Nebraska. He'll take his official September 17th. That's the Oklahoma weekend. He'll take that to USC. October 1st will be Mississippi. And when it comes to criteria, Malachi wants someone that is good in academics, personal development, and a good relationship with the coaching staff. He wants to do some track dabbling as well. But winning is what's most important to him. Ole Miss and Lane, they're winning ball games. They're going to New Year's Day bowl games. USC in a rut, but high-flying offense, Lincoln Riley coming to town. SC's supposed to be good. Oregon's been top 10, top 15 the last several years. Georgia coming off a national championship. And Michigan went to the college football playoff last year. And then there's Nebraska. So Nebraska can do a lot of legwork, not just with where they're located and how Malachi's family could get to see him play. They can watch him wherever he goes, but it's real convenient to watch him if he stays in Lincoln. And I think Nebraska, you should feel pretty good, but you got to do your part now on the field. So there's no question mark or issue with staff beyond this year. take care of what you can take care of as a Nebraska team on the field to make sure you land him.
We've got Paul on the line. He says he's got a correction for you, Schmitty.
That's shocking. Paul, go ahead.
Schmitty. Switzer, yeah, he had one great player, all signed, sealed, and delivered, ready to go. And then on signing day,
Turner Gill. Turner Gill.
Yeah,
we can play the audio of Barry from. He still is pissed about that because he'll mention it once in an interview with us.
Yeah, and we gotta give the man his props. I mean, he was a man of visionary. I mean, paying players. He was a man ahead of his time.
Well, he still got championships. I mean, I don't know that Switzer handed the money directly. I've never accused him of that. Never will I ask him that. But
I would. I'm just pulling his leg.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to get dirty, I mean, look at Oklahoma State and A&M and all those guys that got TV bans. Oklahoma did too, but OU bounced back. So Turner Gill was that was really absent-minded of me. Big time program changing for Nebraska.
Hey, have a good one, guys.
Yep, there he is. Paul Schmidt, you got this wrong. You kind of flubbed that, Turner Gill. But he typically didn't lose out.
Before my time.
Before mine. Or I was a year old, forgive me. But back to Malachi. And, I mean, how do you feel about this? I mean, is it as simple as keeping the full court press on if you're Nebraska and just winning 6, 7, 8 games so that everyone's back next year to get him?
Maybe not the full court press, but read in between the lines and maybe you pull out like a half court trap, because I'm listening to it and he's talking about, I'm gonna have to get another phone because my line is just blowing up all the time with all these people calling me, trying to recruit me. If I'm Nebraska, reading in between the lines, that's a kid who doesn't like that. That's a kid who's saying,
he liked it at first. Everyone's wowed by it, but then it's now tiresome and it's grinding on you.
So you've already rolled out the red carpet. You've already rolled out your full court press. Now maybe you sink back into it. The game has started already. So you went for the shock factor early in the first half where you're going for that full court press. But then after halftime, it's about pulling back and keeping your energy for the long haul, going into the half court trap, if we're going to use a basketball analogy, because it's the aspect of, while you do want to recruit this kid, you don't want to turn this kid off because of you're over recruiting him. You have to find out what works for every single kid. And he seems like the kind of guy that wants to, play football and go train first and foremost, rather than be a recruit first and foremost. So you have to understand, you have to figure out what perspective you need to take with each kid in terms of their recruitment in order to best find success with them. And whenever I listen to what Malachi says, it sounds like a guy who, while he enjoys the recruitment process, he is more focused on becoming the best version of himself at the next level rather than enjoying this process while it lasts. So adjust to that and find the right recruitment strategy for him.
So who's looking at Malachi where? Nebraska, Georgia want him at wide out. Ole Miss, Oklahoma want him as a hybrid tight end. Michigan and SC want him as an outside backer. Oregon says, you make the call. Play where you want to play. And right now, what you have with Nebraska is a position coach that has an incredible track record of developing 5 stars, 3 stars at LSU. And you've got some guys on campus now that are formerly of LSU. It'll be really cool to see what Trey Palmer can get done this year as a transfer under Mickey, but also that wide receiver room, right? I mean, that's a showcase. That's an advertisement, not just who'd you bring with you from Louisiana, but what are you going to do with a guy in, I don't know, Alante Brown? What are you going to do with a guy in Omar Manning? What are you going to do with a guy in Martin? Some of the kids you inherited that are really good players and went to play ball elsewhere. What are you going to do with that? And Mickey's been better than good at working with kids he's either recruited or had in a room and getting the most out of them. So, Mickey's as strong as it gets.
Well, and it's important to note that
in that room.
Yeah, sorry, that Mickey Joseph connection is I think one of the reasons why that Malachi does slot so well into being a wide receiver at Nebraska as opposed to a guy on the defensive side of the ball. Nebraska's pretty well set up on the defensive side of the ball in terms of some of those edge rushers that they got. But you look offensively, Mickey Joseph was able to turn Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Arguably, those are two of the top 10 receivers in the NFL right now. You could even argue two of the top 10 receivers or two of the top 5 receivers in the NFL right now. And you look at a guy like Malachi Coleman, physically, his traits, he outclasses both Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson where they were coming from out of high school. He outclasses both of them. When we're talking the likes of physical traits of Dez Bryant, AJ Green, DK Metcalf's lofty with what DK looked like coming out for the draft, but you're looking at those type of guys in terms of physically unique talents that even guys like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson can't match. And that's why Mickey loves Malachi as a wide receiver so much because, train him up right, get him developed right, first round potential.
Well, let's be flat out frank. The only reason Nebraska's in this is because of Mickey Joseph. The only reason Nebraska will stay in this is because of Mickey Joseph. And Nebraska can do some legwork on their own with winning. And answering that question, are you going to be a place that wins? Because you haven't been. Does it flip for your top guy on board that's also in state? We'll dive in to some Ochaun Mathis thoughts. Hail Varsity continues, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, as we work through a Monday, some Ochaun Mathis news and notes as he met the media today. We'll get there in a moment. Phone numbers to get in, open phones till 6. You can join us, chime in. And if you got a Jack Pierce story, we'd take that as well, as we remember the great coach. Action Jack passing away this morning, 466-377-6800, 825-5865. You're directed to the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Hail Varsity Radio. Also on the YouTube channel with Hail Varsity Radio. Coach McBride kicked off this hour with us, and he remembered his dear friend about 30 minutes ago or so. You can email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. So, Ochaun Mathis, things have been going pretty well, and you'd have to imagine it's quite a transition from, TCU to Nebraska, and the expectations, the NIL, the recruitment, the battle that was Nebraska v. Texas. And Ochaun started off, it was asked, the question a lot of Nebraska fans are wondering, how are things going? How's camp? How's this outlook for you as the season nears?
I say the workouts have led me to a point to where I got conditioned enough to be in this type of program, and the Big Ten is a lot more different. Although there's a lot more running, and the heat aspect of everything here is it's not too much different from Texas. And it's got me to a point where I got here and I was able to get and implement myself into this sort of a kind of like a family type deal, getting it all, and everything is coming on so well here so far.
It sounds like shop class. It is not. It was a media session, and the football building is being worked on, so there were sparks flying behind Ochaun with some power saw going off on metal. So there were sparks, and it was a backdrop that should have been filmed more in depth. So that was Ochaun, how things are going. Here's Coach Chinander on what he's seen so far from Ochaun. I think it's cut 9. We're going to hear from Chins here.
Ochaun's a great job. I thought Ochaun had a really good scrimmage. He's different structured defense. He was off the ball a lot last year, it seemed. So he's had to play a little bit more, true defensive end for us, which he's done a great job responding to Coach Dawson. He's picked up everything. He's really a big-time effort guy, and he showed up yesterday at the scrimmage. So it's really nice to have, guys on the edge. You already have Caleb and Garrett. Now you throw Ochaun in the mix, and then Jamari Butler and Blaze Gunnarsson have had tremendous camps as well. So it's going to be really good to have a good rotation on that edge.
So where is he going to line up? Here is Ochaun telling you where they'll slot him, and Jay Moore touched on that a little bit earlier, some of the advantages with him against either tight ends or left tackles.
I know a few times in practice, they had me play mainly onto the boundary side of the field, which will allow me to rush. But also I'm trying to learn my best to learn some of the coverages as well, because it's best for the film and the aspect of just going to the next level.
So Mathis was asked how's bonding going? That's the big question. And it's a huge question for college players, right? And it's a big question for the NFL. When someone gets paid, when someone's making a ton of money in that locker room, is there jealousy? Is there excitement for a teammate because you're close and you're happy for someone? How's that dynamic? It's one thing to add an all-conference performer, the best pass rusher in the portal. It's another to walk into the locker room and not disrupt anything or have petty jealousies. You hope everyone's happy for someone's success financially. You hope someone's happy that this guy can help us be bowl eligible and win football games if you're a Nebraska fan. And that in the reality, there's petty jealousy in the world, but I don't know that there's a lot of that going on with this team just because they're looking at it as an opportunity for help with a really great player. And then I think guys are real honest with themselves that if I want to be the best and I get challenged for playing time, it's going to be up to me to get better and get some trust gained. But here is Mathis when it comes to bonding with Nelson and also bonding with Caleb Tanner. I mean, both those guys want snaps, but they also, it sounds like, are looking at it based on their conversations last week. They welcome the guy because of his talent level.
Yeah, I felt that Spurs, as soon as I got up here, they had open arms for me. And coming into just watching film, they'll allow me to call me. We got the numbers exchanged already. They call me whenever I want to work on some things in the indoor facility. And it's also fun in watching film. Before film sessions, we'll just crack some jokes and stuff like that. And this made us a lot more closer.
So what's about the Nebraska culture and how is that set? What's it like? How's it been through this camp? More from Ochaun Mathis.
What I tell everyone is it's a lot more discipline here. I think the culture here is more in a growing aspect because there's a lot of history here, and we know that. We all know that. We came in knowing that. And one thing we all wanted to do coming in here is just to bring back that culture and bring it back into its prime, if anything. And everything else is just the coaches. They know they brought in speakers to talk to us and stuff like that, talking about how they played for Nebraska and how it was then and how it should be now, and just trying to bring it all back.
Last thought here from Ochaun Mathis, specifically his part in this transition. And it's one thing to have a guy that's the greatest thing since sliced bread come in, and that's not taking a shot at him. That's how, the hype's unreal.
That's how recruiting goes.
Yeah, that's how it is. He's the next great. He's still got to go earn it in the Big Ten. And it says a lot to me about him where he could have gone and stayed in a familiar league in the Big 12 where he had dominated the times.
Could have gone to a team that got one first place vote in the coaches poll.
Could have gone to Texas, right? But no, he part of the reason he chose the Big Ten is because they are really good at mimicking the NFL, specifically with the lines of scrimmage you're going to play on and against. And here is Mathis about coming in humble to be a good teammate.
I say I come in, and one thing I don't want is that I don't want to come in and make it look like I'm the big time guy trying to take control of everything and stuff like that. So I came in with a humble mindset. Although I've always been humble. You could talk to my mom on Twitter. She's always on there. And she's probably going to see this. But yeah, just going in, just trying not to create any eggshells to step on, and coming up with a soft approach, talking to the guys, getting to know them. And all that played a part in my integration into the process of being on the team.
We will wind down a Monday. Reminder to get the podcast with Hail Varsity. Can do so. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. That's the audio side. Want to see the video? Buyer beware. There's about an hour and a half of me and Elijah on screen. That'll be posted on the Hail Varsity video channel. We'll wrap up a Monday. Big thanks to Charlie McBride. Big thanks to Jay Moore. Hail Varsity continues, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Tomorrow, Mitch Sherman will be with us from The Athletic. We'll catch up with Rick Kaczynski at Tuesday with Kaz. This week, Tim Brando, lead play-by-play man for Fox College Football. He'll join us. Maybe a Searles sighting on Thursday. Happy birthday shout-out to Searles. And we'll wind down Friday at the Hail Varsity Club up in La Vista, 4 to 6, live in La Vista, the Hail Varsity Club. So you're invited up there. And be sure to put that on your calendar. So we've spent plenty of time talking recruiting. We hit on the scrimmage and post-practice today. And really, it's just about continuing to get better for this football team, working out the kinks. And I think we knew a lot of the kinks still exist in the offensive line. They're trying to settle and also work. And then Coach Chinander described that the A team, so to speak, you're starting 11. You feel good about defensively, but when you mix in some backups with the starters, that's where there's a little bit of a gap. You did have a report from Mitch Sherman. Nebraska's added another player to the secondary, and that is Brendan Moore. He's a 6th-year safety that's transferred in from Central Florida. So I look at that safety room, and I look at Farmer. All right. You look at a number of guys that are competing there.
I mean, there's tons. You got Deshaun Singleton. You got Marquise Buford. Those are the two that I honestly think I might be penciling in as the two guys who are going to be starting in that back end. In Marquise Buford, Deshaun Singleton, with what Travis Fisher's been saying about those guys coming out of camp. It sounds like they've both been very impressive, especially Marquise Buford. He's been picking things up fast and has made big strides since last season. So those might be my pencil names. I'm not confident enough to put those guys into pen, except Marquise Buford. I might have transitioned to pen with Marquise Buford back there, but a lot of competition in that safety room for sure.
You do, and you have Buford and Kane Williams.
Kane Williams as well. Sounds like
I think he had a pick 6
in the scrimmage on Saturday.
Right. So you have Williams at safety. You've got Farmers at safety. You got Singleton at safety. You have Nopola Gates at safety, and then Gifford and Buddha Wright. Both those guys are 2 of your nickels, right? So you really don't have that many safeties. We've got about 4. Now you have a 5th that's played for Coach Fisher before.
You also have Omar Brown. Remember guy.
Yeah, Omar Brown. Yeah,
he's a guy who's been working both corner and safety.
So yeah, you just don't have that starting spot solidified. There's a lot being asked to Miles Farmer, who's shown really good flashes in limited time. He's been a guy that gets the football for you if you're Nebraska's defense.
And Travis Fisher a couple weeks ago said he's the guy that he's made strides, but you're waiting for him to take that next big step in his development. And that's where he's at. I guess.
Well, and a guy like Trey Neal, remember year 1, who transferred in from Central Florida. He was extremely vital in helping new faces get what Fisher wants from a peer-to-peer standpoint. Thanks for the time. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back at you tomorrow. Mike St. James will have a Better Call Saul recap with us tomorrow as well. Take care. Talk to you tomorrow at 4 on Hail Varsity.